His name is Tom Papper, and he is an independent journalist. He is also, most importantly, the creator of God Emperor Trump, which is a ultra famous meme page, one of the most popular pro-Trump meme pages on Facebook and also on Twitter. And I've been a fan of the page for years, and now Tom and I have been friends for a couple of years as well. And we do enjoy broadcasting together. And I brought him on. He is up in the wee hours. He's actually on Central Time in the U.S. So for him, it's like 4 a.m. And we appreciate him being up at this very odd hour before a long workday. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing great, Dan. Thanks so much for having me on the show. And I have to say, you're always like way too kind with these introductions. But thanks again. It's an honor to be back on.
I'm a big fan, Tom. Have you taken your brain force today, though?
I took the last of it just the other day, and I need to go take advantage of some of the deals you guys have going right now. I will say that I would not have made it through my last year of liberal college indoctrination if not for brain force. I was working pretty much full time and going to school, dealing with the liberals. I mean, it is every bit as bad as you would think. And if it wasn't for brain force keeping me going, I don't think I would have made it. So it gets a strong endorsement from me.
This stuff is no joke. Nootropics are the real deal. Silicon Valley has been all over them for years. We have CEOs from the top Fortune 500 companies that swear by them. So anyone who thinks they're just snake oil perhaps hasn't tried them. They should give them a try at some point. Can't recommend one better than Brain Force. But anyways, moving on. Tom, you have had an interesting year. In addition to having to survive college, you've also survived many zuckenings, and you have also survived coming out of the closet, so to speak, as being the man behind the curtain at God Emperor Trump. How have the last few weeks been for you? How are things going at God Emperor? I know they've been messing with you big time, but I think you got your feet back on solid ground now.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we were down for 22 days. Facebook deleted our page. They then proceeded to delete every single one of our pages and groups. So we had a group with 12,000 members. Of course, our main page, God Emperor Trump, 330,000 likes. We had a page with 80,000 likes, so on and so forth. We were systematically purged from Facebook. 22 days later, after jumping through hilarious hoops, getting notarized documents signed over weekends, emailing them, scanning them, getting them to Facebook, they finally gave all of our pages back. And I would say that, yes, not only did they give our pages back, but it seems as though we are slightly less shadow banned. It's actually very exciting that Facebook is, I think maybe it has to do with the pressure from Ted Cruz and other people in Congress. But for a change, they're actually letting up. The boot is coming off of our throats for a change. It's kind of nice.
Donald is bringing the delegates back for social media on your behalf. I would say that coming back after 22 days after the Zuck is basically the social media equivalent of being in the casket. The dirt is being piled on. We're ready to say goodbye forever. And all of a sudden, a few weeks at very minimum for the president himself. But I would say for the world, I think things are going in a good direction, especially over in Asia and relations with North Korea. So give us a little synopsis on how you see things having gone in the last few weeks leading up to the God Emperor's birthday yesterday.
Well, Dan, you keep using a phrase and it just keeps being proven true. Only losers hate Trump. I mean, just look at what happened in North Korea. We had this Legion of Doom in Canada and another Legion of Doom in Italy, where you were in the Bilderberg group, both plotting essentially the destruction of humanity as we know it. And then you have President Trump flying in Air Force One to Singapore to essentially save the world as we know it. So, I mean, it is just comical the way that this is coming into like a superhero type thing where we have these evil people meeting in secretive groups. And meanwhile, Trump is doing everything under a spotlight. So I think it's been a fantastic couple weeks for Trump. Of course, like you said, North Korea. Who really saw that one coming? We're learning a lot of things about Kim Jong-un that I think nobody was really sure about before. Who would know that Dennis Rodman was right about pretty much everything? And then capping it off with yesterday now, the horrific Inspector General's report, where the more people are picking it apart, the more quotes from these rogue agents that come out. It's just getting so dang salty. I love it. And I don't know how the liberals are going to continue to delude themselves and put their head in the sand on this one. I mean, they're great at it, don't get me wrong, but it's just going to get harder and harder as time goes on.
Yeah, definitely. The initial reaction for me, it's a little tougher when the news breaks closer to the evening and at night for you guys, as I am already deep into the evening. So I've had a chance to look over the synopsis of what's gone on in the IG report, about 500 pages. Of course, I have not had time to read that, but at first I was a little disappointed because I said, okay, it's just another one of those where they hype, and then they come out and say, oh, there's no political bias. And that's what a lot of the mainstream media has led off with. That's the way they're kind of sugarcoat the report before they give it to you. Oh, there was no political bias. Hillary had no intent to commit a crime. However, like you said, the more time that people have to pick this apart and pick apart these text messages, it really is damning. And I do have to wonder if, in a way, if the people that construct the report and know that kind of finalize it before it goes out, if they realize that they can be, I don't want to say cryptic, but they don't have to be as forthcoming. Like, they don't have to spill it all out so that the mainstream public understands it right away, because they know that there are really good independent journalists now and analysts who will pick it apart and take it the distance. What do you think about that?
Well, I think to some extent we're used to it because we've had this kind of spin now going on really decades. But those of us who have been in the trenches these last few years are well accustomed to it, because the globalists like to create these parallel realities where those of us who actually read the document, we're seeing things like when they call the Hillary Clinton email investigation the most meaningless thing they've ever worked on, as so pointless of an exercise. These are real quotes that came from their text messages. Those of us who actually read the report know that. However, then there's this other reality that people who just watch CNN, MSNBC, the drones, the sheep, the people who just lights on but nobody's home, they don't get that side of it. They only get the part that you just said. Oh, there is no political bias. And then they never go beyond that surface level. So I think it's just, it's their pathetic way of trying to keep control over us. We saw it with the WikiLeaks. We saw it with some of the things in the WikiLeaks that then spun a little too far out of control. And that's what we're seeing here. But I think each time they pull this same old trick, it becomes a little less effective.
Yeah, definitely. They do try to play it down. I do have my suspicions now just about the entire, not just the deep state, but the state. I mean, we know what the deep state is at this point, but some of the actors who we might have thought, were real solid, the Trey Gowdies, the Jeff Sessionses of the world, they are suspect now, because it's just they take forever. They grind along. Nothing really comes out of it. We're all doing our best. I mean, people like, there are some haters out there, but people like Sean Hannity, who are like grinding it out every night on Fox News with his contributors, and that just hammering this every night. I do admire their tenacity, and I'm glad that there's someone keeping in the spotlight. But for the average American, I think it's a little tough. We want to see results. We want to see some people going to jail. We want to see some trials. We don't want it to be just our guys, the Paul Manaforts, the General Flynn's. We want to see some of their guys going down. So, I mean, what do you think? Is really anything going to come of this? Is it going to be like a slow drip, or do you see some kind of explosion, some flashpoint coming at some point soon?
My honest hope is that this whole thing is going to make it so we can't trust the Russia investigation anymore. We've already had one agent implicated, who was in the Mueller investigation, implicated in all of this, resign. And if this can cast enough doubt on the Mueller investigation, my hope is that we can get past this ridiculous Russia phenomenon, this hoax, as the president all the time calls it. And maybe because, it will look really bad if President Trump, while he is under investigation, starts going after Hillary Clinton and all of these other people who there's more and more evidence. And this Inspector General report, the way that, it seems so sugar-coated, their conclusions, when they say there's no evidence of political bias, even though there's rampant evidence of what appears to be political bias throughout it, at least to the layman, maybe not the expert. But in the report, they mentioned regarding the Hillary Clinton investigation, well, this is also blanking pointless because we all know it's not going to come to anything. And that's a paraphrase quote from, I think, Agent 1 or Agent 5. And that's basically what the Inspector General report comes to. It's letting the people of the United States know exactly how corrupt our government is without actually giving us a way to fix it. And you're right, Dan, people just are getting tired of this. There was a reason lots of people were chanting lock her up in 2016, and I know a lot of people's patience is wearing thin, but hopefully this will at least give Trump some leverage so he can, get past the Russia thing and start actually going after criminals.
Trump's in now a year and a half. We haven't even hit the halfway point, to be honest. And we know that just the amount of work to be done for basically Trump and a very small group of trustworthy people is monumental. And that constantly there's roadblocks being thrown in their way. There's the investigation, there's the media. So the fact that he gets anything done is incredible, but there is real progress happening. And I think one of the most important things that is moving along is the economy. We have, I think JP Morgan is saying that it's at 4% right now. That's probably what we're going to see at the next report. So at the ground level for Americans who have been hurting since the recession and just not seeing a lot of hope in sight, I think that it's starting to lift off at the ground level. And for a lot of people, that's all they care about, that and immigration. And to me, economy and immigration are the two most important issues facing basically the entire West. I think Trump is doing what he can on immigration, testing the legal waters. There are a lot of judges getting in the way. There's a process that has to be followed, but it's still not even the halfway point. He's gotten some really important things out of the way. He's doing some big things on the global stage. Do you see second half, he starts turning things up, build the wall, maybe some more immigration crackdowns? Or do you think that he's saving that perhaps even for like late into the term, maybe even into the next term? Obviously, we know that's going to happen. Knock on wood. What do you think? Is he slow playing?
Well, I think what we've seen, Trump did all the mainstream Republican things in his first year. And in January of 2018, a lot of rumors came out. I'm sure Infowars had some articles on this. I know Breitbart and other places did, that were saying Trump is going to go after trade hard. He's going to go after North Korea hard in 2018. In spite of mainstream Republican opposition, a lot of people said this trade stuff that he's doing was terrible. It was going to destroy the country. They're still saying that today. And, we all know why they're wrong. So I think Trump in his first year did everything that every other Republican running would have dreamed of doing. He cut taxes. He started the process of dismantling Obamacare. He cut a bunch of unnecessary regulations. He got Gorsuch in. He did all of the mainstream kind of normie Republican things. And so now here we are into the second year of the Trump administration after a first year that was very impressive, but not like dazzling. And we've already seen this meeting with North Korea that could potentially lead to the denuclearization of the peninsula. And I mean, long term peace on the Korean peninsula. I mean, very long term. That is the goal here, I think. We've seen this already. We've seen again in the first 500 days, the economy going insane. We've seen the World Cup, which now even leftists are saying, look, you have to give Trump some credit here. So the country is getting its reputation back in the world stage. We're starting to see some more unorthodox stuff coming out already. And I think as stuff goes along, especially after this 2018 midterm election is over, it's just going to keep getting more and more crazy until the 2020 reelection.
Yeah, if things keep going in this direction, the autistic screeching is going to be monumental. It's one of the most important things that I see is that the people who even seemed like reasonable leftists in a way, like Bill Maher, they're really showing their true colors, right? Like people say, oh, he's a true liberal. I mean, I never liked the guy. I think he's a scumbag. But it's really showing the true colors. The line is in the sand. There are the people who want to see the country succeed, who want world peace, who want things to go in the right direction. And then there are the absolute maniacs who are rooting for the economy to nosedive, to get rid of Trump, rooting for a nuclear war with North Korea to get Trump out. So I think that we've really driven this line in the sand. I think in general, our side of things has more people on it, although there are plenty on their side of things. What do you think about a couple of years ago, when things weren't looking good, Obama was in office and Hillary was looking like, a guaranteed. I put an American flag patch on my backpack, and I put it on upside down, nation in distress. Just a symbolic gesture on my part. I have left it in that fashion because despite the fact that Trump is doing great, the country is doing very well in many regards, the country is also fracturing along a deep fault line. And I don't know how we ever come back from that in terms of like a society. What do you think? Like, where do you see the future going? If Trump keeps doing really well, the lefties are going to keep going crazier. They're not going to change their mind. There's nobody changing their mind at this point, except for a few people left in the center. Where do we go from here as a society, as a civilization in the United States?
Well, I mean, obviously there's two ways, and one is horrifying. Look at what's happening in Great Britain. And the other way is we slowly start chipping away at this, because there is this segment of the population that is brainwashed, and they may never snap out of it. But there's a lot of other people who are just plain apathetic. I mean, we all know the people, the sports watchers, the beer swillers, not that there's anything wrong with that, but the people who are just unconscious, and they go to work every day and they go home and their taxes go up and they go, oh, that sucks. There's a lot of those people out there, and there's a lot of people dependent on government who don't necessarily want to be. And so I think it all comes down to the culture war. I mean, that's what we all kind of know. I think Alex Jones and the Infowars crew knows that more than anybody else, that politics is downstream from culture. And so I think Trump also definitely knows this. The man's a reality TV star and a superstar in his own right. And when he does things like reach out to Kanye, who is at the top of his game in spite of the mainstream media calling him every name you can think of, even the ones you can't possibly say on radio or television, and yet he's at the top of his game. Meanwhile, Jay-Z and Beyonce, the two superstars that have been hoisted up by the left, they are giving away tickets in London parking lots. That was an article from The Sun the other day. I mean, it's just, we can see how the culture war is changing. And I think that is the key toward bringing people, if not to our side, at least to the center, at least to be awake and being like, well, Trump's doing some good things. Trump is, lowering taxes. That's good. And that's what I think is our best bet. We're not necessarily going to get everybody on our side, but we'll get enough people looking at the left and going, Trump is being reasonable. You guys are nuts. You're autistically screeching, as we like to say. I think that's our best bet. And eventually these screechers will become such a minute part of society. It'll be kind of like the radical communists from the 60s. They were just looked at like, these guys are off over on the side. And I think that's our best bet. We'll push these people back to the margins where they belong.
There do seem to be fractures in the cultural order. As you mentioned, we have Kanye, Kim Kardashian even. I mean, she's teaming up with the president to on these prison reforms, and people who we would never would have expected. The memes are so good now. We have Dennis Rodman, the memes that are tying this all together, because you can look at pictures of Trump and all these people from years ago and say, wow, could you have ever believed that these people will be the ones to bring peace to the Korean Peninsula potentially, right? So there is some hope on the horizon. Hollywood has exposed itself as just feral. They're absolutely feral leftists. They're maniacs. And I think that that's showing in the box offices. I don't think they're doing that well at this point. And then the entertainment industry in general was already in a state of turmoil with the changes in the way that media is delivered, the music.
Well, they're just dinosaurs. I mean, they are. I'll give you an example. I was listening to a podcast today, and it was with Mark Maron and Drew Carey, and they're sitting there trashing Trump, and they're saying, this is the straight white male's last desperate grasp for relevance. That's a real thing they said. And I'm like, man, you guys are in your 50s and 60s. Dan, you're in your 30s. I'm in my early 20s. We are the future. They are the past. They're just so dinosaurs, and they can't even understand. They don't even have the presence of mind to understand that they are on the way out and we are on the way in.
Definitely. The times are changing, and the Trump movement, I would say, is quite youthful. It spans many age ranges, but I think that there is youth on our side, and We are going to be driving them all the way out through the boomers, out through the end of this.
Right.
And hopefully we can take control of culture as well. As you know, I was a musician for many years, and I basically had to separate myself from that career to move on to this one, as I was told that if I ever even let on at all, I was told by a close friend in the industry who has had much success, you would know his band's name, that if I was to let on my views at all, I would have no future in music. So eventually I just kind of parlayed into this and just left that in the past. So I look forward to a time when artists can speak their minds again about whatever they'd like to talk about, whether they're radical communists or radical MAGA. I don't care. We should all have a seat at the table and be able to speak our minds. But we are closing in on the end of this segment, Tom. I just want to get your final thoughts, and please also plug for us where we can find you online and your wonderful new podcast.
Well, I've got to say, Dan, that we are lucky to have you in the Infowars, as great as your music is, and it is great. I think we're lucky to have you here. Of course, you can find me on Facebook. God Emperor Trump is the main page, 330,000 likes. Of course, we have a program we do, as I said, every weeknight at 6 p.m. here, Central Daylight Time. That's 7 o'clock Eastern. And of course, you can find everything else by going to the God Emperor Trump Facebook page. And thanks so much for having me on again, Dan.
Thank you, Tom. We'll be back with Luca Donadale after the break.